I was taken by surprise when DC Universe got announced. In a lot of ways, the decision to make a streaming service was confusing and frustrating to me. After all, everyone from Disney to CBS to Yahoo are starting streaming services now, and even YouTube is trying their hand at it, even though it's not the most successful endeavor. But honestly, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Especially when you consider how in the past, networks like Cartoon Network and NBC have treated DC shows pretty poorly and kind of screwed over their fan bases. So today, I'm going to look past my cynicism and decide, as a die-hard DC fan, whether or not DC Universe is worth it to me. Now, I'd like to give this product a fair and balanced review, so I've created a rubric based off of what I'd like to see from the service and what I think should be the standard for it. If I did my editing right, that rubric should be on screen right now. Despite my skepticism, I would still very much like to see this service succeed. But before I even used the service, I already had in mind what I wanted out of it. I wanted it to be easy to use, easy to access. I want its library of content to be diverse and inclusive of obscure titles as well as the more popular ones. I want the comic library to be equally diverse and offer full runs of comics instead of just random issues here and there. And most of all, I want to feel like I'm getting what I paid for. Now, that being said, the price point seems like a pretty good place to start. You can pay $75 for a year of access, or you could pay $8 a month for monthly access, which would round out to about $100 a year. So right off the bat, I noticed that the monthly price is right around the exact same price of what basic Netflix used to be. The only problem right now is that the content selection isn't nearly as diverse as Netflix, and unlike Netflix, there's nothing available at all in 4K right now, so people looking to get the best picture available may walk away disappointed. Now, that being said, they are apparently planning to add 4K content in the future, but for now, I think you'll still find enough content to keep yourself entertained for a few weeks. And with the slate of shows that's scheduled to come out this year, there's no doubt in my mind that this service will feel a lot more worthwhile towards the end of the year. But right now, the service is honestly pretty lacking in OC when you compare it to other services around the same price, like Amazon Prime. But just like Prime, to make up for the lack of content, DC Universe offers you access to more than just streaming TV and movies. You get access to an exclusive merchandise store filled with merch available only to DC Universe members. In addition to this, you get access to a rotating selection of comics as well, and access to the DC Universe forums. When it came down to their comic book selection, I actually ended up being incredibly impressed. The comic selection on DC Universe was exactly what I was looking for. It had full runs of comics that can be broken down by story, by author, by year, or even by the characters featured in them. And on top of that, I love that I can read events like Infinite Crisis and DC 1 Million in their entirety. And there's even a few intercompany crossovers included, like Batman and Ninja Turtles, or Harley and Ivy meet Betty and Veronica. In my opinion, the comic book selection is where this service really shines, and I think the price of entry is justified by the massive library of comics alone. I really like the idea of having all these books at my fingertips, and the fact that I could flip through any of them on a whim, anytime, anywhere, makes me really happy. And considering Marvel Comics Unlimited is even more expensive and doesn't even offer you the rest of the stuff that DC Universe offers, like TV shows, movies, and a merchandise store, is really definitive of how much value DC Universe really has to me. To me as a comic book consumer, paying $70 a year is worth it for the comic selection alone, not even counting all of the movies and TV shows that are on this. And like I said before, Marvel's own version of this only offers comics and it's even more expensive. This is going to be one of the few sections of the review that's going to get a solid 10 out of 10. And sure, it doesn't have everything, but the fact that there's 400 something out of 900 something issues of Action Comics and Detective Comics really says a lot. And I just gotta say it one more time. I'm extremely happy with the selection here, more so than with anything else on the service, to be honest with you. I've been pretty disappointed so far, but the comics have really sold me on the service. The forums of DC Universe were pretty basic and about what I expected. The experience here is about what you would get on any official forum for anything. There's sections to share your collections, your fan art, discuss the stories, and there are even some off-topic sections, which is kind of funny because it seems like they're mostly talking about Marvel stuff. All in all, I think it's a pretty well-rounded community that could foster some interesting activity, but I'm already so active on Reddit, and Discord that I can't imagine a reason to start posting here as well. But I made a couple of posts and poked around with it for a few hours, and I think it's okay. It's nothing grand though, so I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. I guess it's pretty much exactly what I expected and not much more, which is a good thing, I guess? I don't know what I really wanted out of the forums. I guess I got what I wanted because I don't really care about them. Moving on. What they offer for merchandise is pretty interesting. There's a wide array of stuff, from action figures to t-shirts to statues, clothes, all sorts of stuff really. To review the store, I decided to order 2 DCU exclusive items. A Batman the Animated Series mug and a Young Justice notebook. I thought the design of the notebook was really cool and would be a great place to write some ideas for videos, and that's why I got it. And the mug, I was a little less happy with, I'm not gonna lie. It's got good art, but it's a really poor print job. I'm not sure if it's just my mug or if it's the whole line in general. If it's the whole line, then that's probably why these things were on clearance. When I go to compare it to some of my Marvel mugs, the print quality is noticeably lower on the DCU one. I really wanted to review one of the DCU exclusive Justice League figures in an item of clothing, but unfortunately I couldn't afford to and my budget didn't allow it at the time. But all in all, I think there's some pretty cool merch available with some great designs, so I'm going to give the merchandise selection a 4 out of 5. But given the quality of my mug, I'm going to give the quality of the merch a 3 out of 5. If anyone's ordered any action figures or clothes from the website, please let me know in the comments down below, because I wasn't able to do enough proper research to find out, and I really want you guys to know what you're going to be getting if you buy anything. Now, here's one of the most vexing issues about DC Universe. I wanted to be able to access DC Universe from my 5 primary devices, meaning my tablet, my phone, my smart TV, my PS4 Pro, and my computer. I found that there were apps for Android, iOS, and even some Roku's and Amazon Fire Sticks. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to find an app for DC Universe on my smart TV, which means anytime I want to watch DC Universe, it'll have to be through my computer into my TV. A minor inconvenience, but it's still detrimental and frustrating to the overall enjoyment and experience of the service. I thought at the very least there would be some apps for Xbox One or PlayStation, but sadly that's not the case either, making the service slightly inaccessible for those without external peripherals attached to their TVs. That means I have to give this part of the rubric 2 points out of 5. Now let's talk about the backlog of old DC content. One of the first things I looked at was the backlog of DCAU content, and about everything you would expect to be here is here, from Batman the Animated Series to Justice League Unlimited. But that being said, there are a few noticeable lapses in content. The Zeta Project is missing in its entirety, and I know the title is so obscure some people might not even consider it DC canon, so maybe I'm just being too picky. But there are 2 series of DCAU Flash cartoons that Bruce Timm did, Gotham Girls and Lobo, and both of those are missing from the library as well. But then again, maybe I'm being too picky, I don't really know. But outside of the DCAU, there's still a treasure trove of animated content to be found on DC Universe, including shows like Teen Titans, The Brave and the Bold, and even one of my favorite underappreciated classics, The Legion of Superheroes. But that being said, I am still pretty disappointed to find some obscure missing content like Zeta Project and Crypto the Superdog, which is a double bummer considering how catchy that theme song was.
Superdog. He's a superhero. He came to Earth from outer space, and his name is Krypton. He's super strong. He's super brave. He's Krypton. Superdog.
But overall, I'm still pretty impressed by this selection. Outside of a few more obscure shows here and there, the library is almost everything you'd expect. So overall, this section gets a 4 out of 5, making it the most well-scored section yet. So at the very least, fans of DC animation might find something worthwhile out of the service. Moving on past the older content, let's get into the stuff that was made this decade. I'm really glad to find some newer animated shows like Young Justice and Green Lantern on this service in their entirety. But at the same time, I'm also a little bit disappointed that some newer shows from the last decade have been ignored altogether. Shows like Justice League Action, Beware the Batman, Vixen, and all of the CW animated shorts are just missing in their entirety. And honestly, I think the fact that JLA is missing might be one of the key things that frustrates me most about this service. Because honestly, it's a great little show, and I really enjoy it. It's funny, it stays true to the comic canon, and it even carries over a lot of the old voice actors from the DCAU. And on top of everything, it has an amazing art style. And honestly, I'd spend a lot more time on this service if I could binge that show while I do chores, because honestly, I never got the chance to see more than a few episodes of it because we cut our cable a few years back. But out of what little I did see from it, I really, really, really loved it, and I really want to see more, but it's not on here, so I can't. Oh yeah, and also Teen Titans Go isn't on there either, but honestly, I think it's a little bit better without that one. Yeah, they can keep that one off of there as far as I'm concerned. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out that they kept the entire backlog of DC Nation shorts. These are a bunch of short cartoons by an assortment of creators that are all based on DC properties. And in fact, Teen Titans Go even spun off out of one of these. You can actually find that short on DC Universe if you want to take a look at it, which I would actually highly recommend, because if you ask me, if they had kept the art style of the original shorts, then the show might have ended up being a lot better than the one we were left with. But I'm getting off topic. All of these shorts are a really great representation of how DC characters can be utilized in diverse ways through the medium of animation, and every single one of these has a lot of heart. My favorite ones out of the bunch were Deadman, Amethyst, and Super Best Friends Forever. There are a couple of missing modern cartoons that keep this section from getting a perfect score, but the plethora of DC Nation content has really helped balance things out for this section. So I have to say overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the backlog of cartoon content, but considering some shows are missing, like JLA and TTG, the new cartoon selection is pretty lacking outside of Young Justice, so I kind of have to give it a 4 out of 5 for now. I don't think kids watching the service would get much out of it because those shows are missing. Plus, the lack of JLA is just a huge game breaker in my opinion. If it wasn't for the DC Nation content, it'd probably be a 3, but because the DC Nation content is here, it's getting a 4. I just like the DC Nation content that much, really. Despite somewhat lackluster offerings elsewhere, I actually found that there's a lot of old school shows on the service, which really helps the service diversify its content selection. There's everything from the old Wonder Woman show to Super Friends to the old Superman serials from the 40s, and even sitcoms from the 90s like Lois and Clark. There's so much archived material, and I can't wait to tear through it all. And there's even some obscure DC programming that time seems to have forgotten entirely. Some that I never even knew existed, like Legends of the Superheroes, the late 80s Superboy show, or even the Aquaman pilot that CW never picked up apparently. Oh yeah, and there's also that old Birds of Prey show from the 90s that's really awful apparently, but I've never seen it so I can't judge. But now maybe I can. But all things considered, there's also some classic shows that are pretty integral to DC's TV history that are just missing in their entirety. Most notably missing is the iconic 1966 Adam West Batman series, and all of CW's Smallville in its entirety as well. Given what's given, I think that makes classic TV a 4 out of 5 as well, with the few missing shows like Smallville and Batman 66 keeping it from a perfect score. And speaking of Smallville, I was also hoping to find the modern CW library on here as well. I'm a pretty big fan of Flash and Supergirl. I love the Silver Age tones of those universes, and I like to watch some episodes of Legends here and there. But much to my dismay, none of the CW content can be found on DC Universe at all, which is incredibly disappointing to me, and in my opinion, is a serious blow against the service's value altogether. I know a lot of people don't like the CW shows, but I'm one of the few people who does, I guess. I love cheesy shows like Flash and Riverdale, I can't even lie. Considering there's no CW content, and there's not even shows like Gotham on here, and the only modern TV show present is the already cancelled Constantine, I gotta give modern TV an utterly abysmal 1 out of 5, making it easily the most disappointing section yet. But you just wait, cause it gets much worse from here on out. When it comes to the Hollywood movies, this is where DC Universe really drops the ball hard. And in fact, it's easier just to list what isn't included to show how utterly disappointed I am. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a few classic movies on here, like the first Superman movie and Tim Burton's Batman, but most of DC's most popular movies are just missing entirely. With more popular movies like the Nolan trilogy and Superman's 2 through 4 just gone. There's also some more DC movies that are missing as well that aren't necessarily superhero movies, like 300, Constantine, Road to Perdition, Watchmen, Red, No Country for Old Men, and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I know that they're not necessarily superhero-centric like the streaming service is trying to be, but they're still based on DC comic books, and they're still extremely legitimate adaptations of comic book media. And some of them are really good examples of how you can do it pretty right. But, I mean, honestly, for this to be a streaming service, it's really odd that there's, like, no movies there whatsoever. Like, just no movies. Like, they didn't even care about the movies. They just threw a bunch of TV shows on there, like, movies? Pfft, no one shows up to Hulu or Netflix to watch movies. It's like they blew their budget on all the Burton flicks and the first Chris Reeves movie, and then they just thought that'd be enough. But you know what? Honestly, it's not enough. Not at all. I may not watch them often, but Jonah Hex and Green Lantern are just so much fun to make fun of with friends, and I really want to have that option if I'm dropping $70 a year in DC's pocket. But you know what you can watch if you drop $70 in DC's pocket? The 1974 Wonder Woman made-for-TV movie. All in all, Classic Films gets 2 cakes out of 5. But if that has you frustrated, again, just you wait, cause it only gets better. There's no DCEU content on here at all. No Justice League, no Wonder Woman, no Suicide Squad, not even Batman vs Superman or Man of Steel. The lack of content is pretty disturbing and frustrating. I mean, I don't ever sit down and say, oh boy, let's watch Suicide Squad, but it'd be nice to have the option, you know? Because like I said before, sometimes it's fun to watch a movie and make fun of it. So between this and the lack of DC CW content, younger fans, again, might be pretty disappointed when they're unable to find anything they've watched growing up, or anything they may still be watching and want to catch up with. Like I said before, this is a serious blow against the service, and it's probably the worst part out of all of it. Overall, modern film selection gets a really sad, stupidly abysmal 0 cakes out of 5. Lex Luthor took them all. Alright guys, it's confession time. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot to factor the entire lineup of DC Animated Universe movies into the rubric of the review. And honestly, it's a pretty important addition to the backlog of DC content, especially considering that there are some really good movies in there. So I'm gonna let this section count as much needed bonus points. And seeing how the review's going so far, we all know DC Universe might need it. So there are roughly 30 animated films in the DC animated film lineup. So for every 5 of those present, I'll give the service 1.5 bonus points, which means that at most, this service could get 9 bonus points just because I messed up the rubric. So exactly how well did they do on our quick little bonus round? That's how well they did. Now, I just want to throw in a disclaimer here, because I found this out after I started editing, but before I had finished writing the video. Apparently, DC Universe cycles the animated movies and modern movies in and out. So, while I was writing this, the Nolan trilogy was made available for streaming, but in less than a month, it was made unavailable again. So what I'm saying is that I know I trashed each of those sections a little bit earlier, so if anything I mentioned that wasn't available before is available now, or I mentioned it being available but it's not available now, then that's why. So if you see something you want to watch, I'd recommend doing so sooner than later, because it might get traded out for something else soon. I think cycling these movies in and out constantly is really dumb, because when it comes to my personal viewing preferences, I don't always sit down wanting to watch just anything. Usually if I want to watch something, I'm seeking out that thing I want to watch specifically. But that's just my taste, and everyone's different. Getting back on topic. If you didn't know, DC actually has a pretty decent selection of documentaries, and I'm really glad those weren't overlooked. I don't have much more to say about the documentaries outside of that. I'm just glad they're here, and if you're looking for a recommendation, Secret Origins is really good, and it's really one of my all-time favorite documentaries in general. So in my opinion, that means the documentaries are going to get a 5 out of 5. DC Universe also offers a daily talk show about DC Comics called DC Daily. If you've ever seen The Talking Dead or Beyond Stranger Things, just imagine that, but mixed with a YouTube podcast from the most generic personalities imaginable. Now, I should admit outright that I don't usually like these types of follow-up shows as is, but I still have a lot of problems with DC Daily regardless, because I really just think it's too corporate. YouTubers do better podcasts live from their own bedrooms. And I think they do it a lot better because they have more personality, more introspective opinions, more relatable perspectives, and they do it all without the aid of a multi-million-dollar studio backing them. Maybe it's just my personal taste, but this show just wasn't for me. Everything on the show just seemed so fake and forced. It was like everyone was trying to be on Ellen instead of just sitting on a couch and talking about comic books. It's not the hardest thing in the world, it's pretty easy actually. You just sit on a couch and you talk about comic books. I mean, really, you don't have to put so much effort and money into something like this. That's my main issue. It just feels so forced and completely unrelatable. I feel like every episode is trying to sell me on why I should read or watch something, instead of just discussing or critiquing the thing they're talking about. But again, YouTubers make better update and discussion videos from their own bedrooms. So go watch Auto Saving the Day instead. It features some really awesome content creators like Diego Rivera, Godzilla Mendoza, and Panels to Pixels. So go check out that podcast in the link in the description, because it's a lot cooler than the one I had to review. Maybe I'm cynical, but I find it a lot cooler to watch a bunch of creators that I know, trust, and relate to, than a bunch of generic talking heads that are just trying to sell me a product. And obviously sitting there having a scripted discussion based around talking points. I mean, it's bad enough to the point that they don't even criticize what they're talking about or offer an objective opinion ever. So, all in all, DC Daily is getting a 2 out of 5. They tried. They really tried. But you know what? I think they tried a little bit too hard. Out of all the original content the DC Universe has released so far, I think Doom Patrol is probably my favorite. And honestly, I can see this even becoming my all-time favorite superhero TV show. Doom Patrol is all about a group of misfits who've suffered terrible accidents, resulting in many of the members being left horribly disfigured and mentally scarred from their trauma. This family of unlikely allies lives in Doom Manor, where they're mentored and led by Professor Niles Calder, the Chief. But unlike most superheroes, these guys don't really save the day at all. In fact, these guys can hardly save themselves half the time. But that's part of the charm and appeal of these guys. They're such a dysfunctional team that it's pretty much impossible not to root for them. The show does a really great job adapting the psychedelic aesthetic of Grant Morrison's run from the 90s. The show is trippy and philosophical and always leaves you wanting more. The plot is really interesting and the characters are super well written and compelling, and the special effects are really well put together too. If you don't like Doom Patrol, don't force yourself to try. Like a lot of Grant Morrison's work in general, it's either something you'll love or something you'll hate. So don't feel bad if it's not for you, because the show definitely is not made for everyone. But that being said, it feels like it was made for people exactly like me. And honestly, that's what made me fall in love with the show. The fact that there's nothing else really like it. Right out the gate, Titans was already better than anything DC related that's on CW right now. And I dare say that it's even better than some Marvel shows like Iron Fist or Inhumans, even though it's still not quite as good as shows like Luke Cage or Jessica Jones. May they rest in peace. Much like the Marvel Netflix shows, Titans deals with much more mature themes than the shows on the CW. The shows deal with the occult, demonic possession, physical abuse, parental manipulation, and even drug abuse. But the heavy tone of the show doesn't weigh it down too much, and in my opinion, it's a much welcome change to have a show deal with something so different and take such a different tone for once. Now there are a few oddities here and there that kind of frustrated me, like the fact that Beast Boy can turn into a tiger. How convenient. But nonetheless, I still found myself really enjoying the show more than I ever expected to. But at the same time though, I can still understand why others didn't enjoy it as much as I did. There's a really melodramatic tone to the show, and things get way too overly angsty sometimes. I'll definitely agree that sometimes the tone does get too edgy, but at the same time though, I don't think they ever get quite as melodramatic as some of the CW shows like Arrow do. Whereas shows like Flash and Legends of Tomorrow carry a goofy and Silver Age tone, the tone of Titans is a lot more akin to a Dark Age comic from the late 80s or early 90s. Think Arrow Season 1 or Season 2. And when I say Dark Age comic, I mean that in a good way, like a Frank Miller Dark Knight way, not in a bad, extreme Rob Liefeld way. I just want to make that clear. This show was really a much welcome surprise. Each of the characters were pretty interesting and faithful to their comic incarnations, even if they do differ a little bit from the 2003 cartoon that I grew up with. Way back in the day, I was so unbelievably disappointed when Young Justice got canceled by Cartoon Network. And honestly, I think that's when Cartoon Network finally died to me. I mean, it had been dying out for years, since 2007 pretty much, but when they axed Young Justice, that was when I just gave up on the network altogether. So seeing that DC Universe brought Young Justice back was almost enough to warrant a subscription for me alone, just because I loved Young Justice that much. But, to be fair, the animation may not be quite as good as it used to be. I mean, I'm still happy to have the show back and all, but you can really tell the animation's quality has taken a huge hit, especially when you compare this scene from Season 1 way back in 2013, 2014, something like that, to this scene in Season 3 from 2019. I still thought the show was well written enough that I can kind of overlook some of the flawed animation, but with that being said, you can still tell that they're kind of struggling with the new animation budget. Another thing they really struggle with this season is balancing all the characters on the show. Already in Season 2 they struggled with balancing all the new characters, but now they've already added 10 more important characters, which pushes a lot of the characters I wanted to see, like Impulse and Blue Beetle, out of the limelight altogether. And this is a problem still, 10 or 11 episodes in. Like I said before, Blue Beetle and Impulse have barely had any appearances outside of brief cameos. And honestly, I can't even remember if characters like Spoiler and Cassandra even got speaking roles. But all that being said, I really enjoyed the first part of this season, and I can't wait to see the second half in early summer. There's actually a lot more content that's going to be released on DC Universe before the end of the year, including the second half of Young Justice's third season, and a Swamp Thing series and a Harley Quinn cartoon. The Swamp Thing show is probably the one I'm most excited for. He's going to be played by Derek Mears, who's played Jason Voorhees and Predator in the past, as well as having roles on shows like Flash and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and even the Ninja Turtles movie. He even played Bullseye in this really good Venom fan film called Truth in Journalism, which you should totally check out. I'm pretty sure it's still on YouTube. If the writing and cinematography of Swamp Thing are half as good as the writing and cinematography for Doom Patrol was, then I'm sure they're going to have their work cut out for them. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but given how much I like Titans and how much I like Doom Patrol, I do actually have really high hopes for this show. I really hope it doesn't let me down. So we'll see when it comes out, I guess. The new Harley Quinn series is another thing I'm pretty excited about, and while we still haven't seen much of it, based off of a few jokes in the trailer alone, I think that this is going to be a pretty charming TV show.
I think they're gonna hate it, Harls. They hate everything.
No way! It's got comedy, action, incredibly gratuitous violence, and unlike that Deadpool cartoon, it's actually coming out.
And given the absence of that Deadpool show that Harley Quinn mentioned, I think that this is a pretty good consolation prize, honestly. And honestly, I'm a lot more excited about this than I am Marvel's Hulu lineup. Who the hell wants to see a show about Dazzler or MODOK? I mean, I get Howard, but seriously, who gives a shit about Tiger except for Hank Pym? I actually wanted to see the Deadpool show, but no, I guess I'm never gonna get that now. Thanks, Disney merger. I don't really know too much about the Stargirl show that's coming out, except for that the Justice Society is gonna make an appearance. It'll feature characters like Wildcat, Hourman, and Dr. Midnight, as well as Starman, played by Joel McHale. And I really hope we get some ties to the 90s Starman comics and some great scenes with Joel McHale, because he's been one of my favorite actors since Community. I kinda wonder what Troy and Abed would have to think about this.
Show's gonna last 3 weeks! 6 seasons and a movie!
I'm pretty excited for most of the shows coming up, so I'm gonna be nice and rate the upcoming selection a 9 out of 10. 2 cartoon series and 2 TV shows on top of 3 already released TV shows isn't bad at all for a year of DC content. Especially considering that it's all brand new, and there's new content coming to the service almost every single week. I think this category serves as a much needed win in determining DC's long-term value to the consumer. I think overall, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10 as far as the price point goes. It's not the best it could be, but it's worth the $70 a year in my opinion. But I probably wouldn't want to pay any more than that for it, especially considering the lack of recent movies like Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad. But I do appreciate access to the newer DC animated releases like Justice League vs. the Fatal 5. And the DC Universe lineup of original series is pretty great too. I know that when I edited the part earlier, I hadn't seen Swamp Thing yet, but I've seen like 2 or 3 episodes now, and I think it's pretty fun, though it sucks that it's already been canceled. I don't really know where to address it, so I guess I should probably address it here. Considering that Swamp Thing's been canceled, there are a whole bunch of rumors that DC Universe as a whole is going to get canceled, and that it's going to get folded in with WB's new streaming service now that WB got bought out or something, and WB is starting a streaming service with all their properties. Which goes back to what I said at the start of the video. Every company is starting their own streaming service now. But the thing is there's a whole bunch of rumors that DC Universe is going to end and get canceled, but I don't know about that. I really hope it doesn't happen, but it would really suck if it did. Especially considering I just spent 6 months writing, researching, and recording and editing this video, which is going to be my longest video to date. In the end, when I go off of my rubric, the final score ended up being a 69, but it got 7.5 bonus points, which brings the score to an overall 76.5, which would be a D or a C depending on which grading system you use. So now that I've spent 6 months reviewing the service, do I actually agree with the grade from the rubric? Honestly, no. But that's because I'm a DC fan, and the rubric was designed to grade it as a streaming service that anyone would enjoy. And the thing is I don't think this is a streaming service for just anyone. This is a streaming service by and for DC comic book fans. Which, I don't know why I expected anything different, really. It is what it is. Like, literally, it is what it is. It's a DC Comics streaming service. And as that, it's pretty great in my opinion. I'm really enjoying it for that. As a diehard Detective Comics fan, the comics section is enough for me to buy a year of access alone. I don't think it would be worth the monthly fee, but if you can afford $70 one time a year, it's not that bad of a buy. Especially considering that it's around the prices of a new video game, and let's be honest, this streaming service has a lot more content than Arkham Knight did. So if you're a big DC Comics fan, enough to the point that you would watch all the animated movies and want to read the backlog of comics, and if you enjoy their original shows like Doom Patrol and Young Justice, then I think the streaming service is really for you. But if you're looking for a place to watch the latest DCAU movies or catch up on the latest CW shows, you'll definitely find yourself disappointed and frustrated. It's a real mixed bag of content, but ultimately, I would really like to see this service grow. I've been enjoying it, like really enjoying it and using it almost daily. Having almost all the DC content in one place is just amazing to me, and Doom Patrol has become one of my favorite superhero shows ever. And now that that season's over, I can read all the comics on the very same app that I watched the show on, from any device, and that's just so great. It's such a wonderful feeling, and it makes me really feel like we're finally living in the future. I don't have to worry if comic books are in print or not when I want to read them, and I don't have to worry about where to start because all that info is within the app itself, which is something that's just extremely welcoming to newcomers and longtime fans alike. I'm a big fan of DC Universe, and if you like comics as much as I do, then I think it's absolutely worth it, even if there is some missing content here and there. Like, seriously, where's that Zeta Project DC Universe? I know I'm probably the only guy that wants to see it, but come on, where is Zeta Project? If you made it this far, wow. I really appreciate it. I've been working on this since January. It'll probably be July by the time this actually comes out. So it's nice to finally put it out into the world 6-7 months later. I really couldn't have done it without the help of my friends and editors, Slither Boy and Elite Gamer. You can check out their links in the description down below. I really can't thank them enough for their help. So after buying access to DC Universe, getting help from 2 editors with the back end of the video, and buying some of the merch to review, this video cost me a little over $100, which is awesome to be honest. This is the first video I've ever had to work a budget around, but it's also one of the reasons that everything took so long. But masks off for a second, I'm gonna be real with you. My channel isn't popular enough to get monetized ads yet, or even to make money at all, really. But all that being said, I'd still really like to throw some more cash into videos like this one. So in order to raise funds, I've decided to open up a few revenue streams via Ko-fi, a Streamlabs, and an Amazon wishlist. Even if you could donate just a couple of dollars, it would help us afford better equipment like these lights and these dyes. That way we can create some dynamic lighting setups, kind of like these guys. And it would help us get a real camera, as well as helping us hire guest editors and guest artists. That way we can start producing more content faster. Which ultimately the goal is to do weekly uploads, but I'm not going to commit myself to that until I can get to the point where the quality would be good enough and I can pump it out fast enough. I'm still kind of learning, is what I'm getting at. But that being said, I really want to make this stuff the best I can. Like, really bad. So if you can help, it'd be greatly appreciated. I'll list your name at the end of a future video, as well as in the description down below for the rest of the volume. Anything helps at all. But even if you can't afford to help out right now, that's perfectly fine. You can still help support the channel by liking the video and sharing it with other friends across social media. I'd like to thank everyone who's already helped to donate, and everyone who's helped support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing along the way. It all adds up, and it's all really helpful. Without everyone that's been helping from the beginning, we never would have been able to break 500 subs in a year. It really means the world to me that I was able to do that in a year. I never even imagined that I'd break 100, so to see myself at 500 subs 1 year in just means a whole lot. Thank you so much, everyone. One more quick heads up. I'm going to be taking an extended hiatus after this upload, or the next one. I don't really know which one's going to come first. I'm going to spend that time working more on future uploads and honestly some stuff that's going to go as far as my Halloween videos for this year. Well, I'm finally going to wrap this up. If you're still here, check out these videos in these playlists, or the extended versions of the Titans, Young Justice, or Doom Patrol videos here. Be sure to like the video and drop a comment down below, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, concerns, criticisms, or suggestions. And finally, be sure to subscribe with the notification bell on for more Super Swim Team 7. I'll see everyone in the next one.